Hey everybody, what's up? You're listening to the On the Couch podcast, the podcast that gives you the view from the therapist's chair. I'm your host, John Dennis, a licensed professional counselor. You're listening to OTC, Episode 1, How to Find the Right Therapist. Hey everybody, what's up? This is your host, John Dennis, with Session 1, Finding the Perfect Therapist. So this is a question that I get so often is, how do I find the right therapist? I search online, do I look in a phone book, do I talk to my insurance provider? Something that I help a lot of people with in my personal and professional life. So just wanted to take some time to talk about the different options. First up is knowing what kind of services you need. Do you need counseling and therefore you're going to need a therapist or a social worker? Are you looking for life coaching? Are you looking for medication and therefore you're going to need a psychiatrist? Do you need psychological testing of some kind and you're going to need a psychologist? So first thing is knowing what is it that you need. And next up is knowing if there's any specialized training that you require. Are you looking for marriage counseling and therefore you need a marriage therapist? Do you want somebody that focuses on anxiety or specializes in post-traumatic stress disorder, things like that? Then you have to determine how you're going to pay for the counseling services. If you're like most of the people on the planet, you're not going to be able to go out of pocket, although a fair number of people do choose to go out of pocket so that it's not on their medical record, for government or military employees, things like that. So if you're using insurance, then you need to know your benefits, and that's going to require checking with your insurance provider and determining whether mental health benefits are or are not covered. And this can be kind of tricky because if you've ever had to do battle with insurance or medical billing or things like that, a lot of times it can get really sticky. So it's important to know beforehand going in what your insurance provider covers. In contacting your insurance provider, you can ask them for a list of providers that are in network, and they'll usually be able to give that to you. However, it's not always completely up to date in terms of who is and isn't accepting new patients. After that, you're likely going to fire up your favorite search engine and check on the internet for any providers in the area. And here there are a number of options. Usually the two that I recommend to start with are Psychology Today and goodtherapy.org. So these are specific therapy websites where therapists, social workers, psychiatrists, a number of different services can purchase profile space, basically like taking out an ad in the Yellow Pages, used to be. And they create a profile, they throw up a picture, it's verified that they're licensed in the state, that they're in good standing, all of those things. And then you're able to search through, typically by zip code or a specific type of service you're seeking, so like group therapy, psychiatrists, relationship counseling, etc. And there you're able to look through the profile, kind of get a sense of, do I think this person could fit with me or not? Most people are, it's kind of like online therapeutic dating, I always say, because, people are just kind of checking out photos and profiles and making a decision based off of that, in addition to, do they take my insurance? And then the ultimate question of, what's their availability? How fast can I get a session with them? Things like that. So the thing to know about these types of websites, like psychologytoday.com and goodtherapy.org, is that they do not use search engine optimization algorithms. They don't allow top posting, they don't allow pay for placement, and that's the way that they level the playing field. So basically, the profiles just rotate through. So let's say today you fire up psychologytoday.com, you may find my profile on the zip code search that you do for the Harrisburg or the Lancaster area. But tomorrow I may not come up until the 10th page or the 4th page or whatever it may be. So they just kind of rotate things through. So you do want to be sure to be thorough and go through all of the pages that come up so that you can really get a good sense of, okay, who would be the best fit. So another option is to use your personal network. So doing a little bit of crowdsourcing, talking to friends or family about, has anybody gotten a recommendation or has anybody worked with a social worker or a therapist that they would recommend to others. And a lot of times in the work that I do, I explain, part of the way that I know that I'm doing a good job as a therapist is if I'm getting personal referrals from the people that I'm working with. And that's one of the things that we focus on as part of our mission for Parenting and Family Solutions is I want people to have such a positive experience with us that they're comfortable recommending a friend or a family member to us because they know that we're going to do a good job taking care of them. And word of mouth travels fast. And so a lot of times people know, good and bad service providers in your area, whether that's a plumber, an electrician, a therapist, an attorney, and you want to use that network as much as you can. Another really good option is to check with your primary care doctor. Depending on what it is that you need counseling for, they're either going to likely already know that you need counseling in a certain area, especially for children and teens. Talking to their primary care physician, their pediatrician, is going to be a really good resource. Usually they've already got a list of counselors and social workers that they refer out to, as well as psychiatrists. And they're going to usually have a decent idea of who works in a specific area, who they had good and bad experiences with, and they're going to be able to steer you in the right direction typically. So a couple of other good resources are any particular organizations that you might belong to, or checking with if there are particular organizations centered around the issue that you need counseling on. So if that's American Cancer Society, or grief and loss, or if that's autism or things like that. Another area is if you practice a particular religious belief, checking with your religious leader, pastor or rabbi, something like that. Oftentimes, they either have counseling services through that, church, synagogue, or they're going to know in the area who they've referred to and who they would recommend. Now, let's say you found a particular therapist either online or you referred to them, and you want to do a little bit more digging to figure out, okay, would this be a good fit, and am I able to start up getting counseling with them? So what I would recommend is checking online for their website, and most therapists and social workers are going to have a website these days. From that, you should be able to get a pretty good sense of what areas they focus on, what type of treatment they use, that type of thing. And then they're either going to take phone calls themselves, or they're going to have an office assistant, virtual assistant, something like that, that helps do intake calls and schedules for them. So you want to call up or email and see if you're able to talk to the therapist or the social worker for a couple of minutes and just get a sense of, what are they about, what type of treatment method do they focus on, and does that fit with what you're looking for. Then from there, it is getting scheduled and trying to get into an appointment. typically as soon as you're able to. And with that, there's a lot of different needs in terms of availability and what people offer. Some therapists only do daytime appointments. Some do a couple evenings a week. Some do weekend appointments. It really just kind of depends. And it also depends on what is your need and how dire is that need. So if it's not a really crucial situation, you're potentially able to wait longer to get into an evening or a spot like that. Now, I will say, as a therapist, the afternoon appointments are the most coveted. Those fill up the fastest. They book out the furthest, and so depending, like we said, if you have really crucial situation where it's okay, we have to get in as soon as possible, you may have to take daytime appointments to get in as quickly as you can. So that's always something important to know going in. And with therapists, especially with psychiatrists, availability is pretty slim. So you may have to fit things in where you're able to. The thing I would probably end on to share with everybody, if everybody was listening to this right now, I would tell them, if you've been questioning whether you need to talk to somebody, if you've been thinking about getting into counseling, I would say, go ahead and do the research, call somebody up and schedule to get in. It's kind of like dehydration, where by the time you realize that you're dehydrated, it's too late. You should have already been drinking water. And same kind of thing. A lot of times, by the time you realize you need counseling, you've probably already been at that point for a while. You just were afraid of kind of pulling the trigger on it, or weren't really fully aware of it. And depending on who you decide to go to counseling for, their availability may not be for a while. So if you're questioning it, I would say go ahead and call up and schedule. So that's it. Session 1 is in the books. Thanks for checking in. Next episode, we'll be talking about what to expect from that first counseling session. If you liked what you heard in the podcast, please be sure to hit subscribe and review our podcast on Apple, Google Play, or Stitcher. If you're interested in connecting with Parenting and Family Solutions, you can find us at www.parentfamilysolutions.com. You can also find us on the internet and social media platforms with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and pretty much just about anything else by searching Parenting and Family Solutions. You can find detailed show notes with links to any references and resources on the podcast website at www.parentfamilysolutions.com/podcast. This is your host, John Dennis, saying good night. The author and host of this podcast is not engaged in a therapeutic relationship with the listener and cannot give counseling advice without a confidential appointment. Listeners should be sure to consult with a licensed therapist in their area or seek emergency medical attention if they are experiencing psychological difficulty. Special thanks to the band The Topsy-Turvies for their song Like a Living Dead. They can be found at topsyturvies.bandcamp.com. The author and host of this podcast is John Dennis. Special thanks to producer and editor Trevor Groff.